Welcome to the Health Fix podcast, where health junkies get their weekly fix of tips, tools, and techniques to have limitless energy, sharp minds, and fit physiques for life.
Hey, health junkies. On this episode of the Health Fix podcast, I'm interviewing Kristine Courville. She's the founder of Sahale Botanicals and a bioregional herbalist inspired by nature's incredible healing power. She blends traditional plant wisdom with modern science and creates sustainable, toxin-free skincare that you can eat and wellness products that represent the rich biodiversity of the Pacific Northwest. She's on a mission to bring blessing and promote healing, even in small ways, through her natural creations. Now, here's the thing. You can eat her products if you were so inclined. Granted, they may not taste delicious because that's not the goal of it. It's to help you out. But the cool part about Kristine is that she's a patient of mine. And I always love it when I get a chance to showcase a patient's creations. And in this case, it hits really close to home because I'm a naturopathic doctor. Of course, I love herbs. And I'm a skincare junkie, so whatever I can do to keep my skin looking youthful, I am all over it. And so she's really highlighted those two areas. And the reason she brought this out, and I really want to bring it to light, is that when we're looking at all the products out there when it comes to skincare, there's some really incredibly expensive medical lines and medical, grade quote products. And I've used a lot of them. I used to be a part owner in a spa, but they weren't always awesome on my skin. They could be harsh. I could have side effects. And of course, being a naturopath, I'm the one that people come to when they can't tolerate certain things. And so Kristine has products that she tested out on herself because she was sensitive, and she's going to tell the story in the podcast. But not only that, she really wants folks to think about the herbs and what we have here on the earth for us to use. Should we not have a supply of certain things? Should we run out? During the pandemic, a lot of things were out of stock. A lot of things were hard to come by. And I really think the movement towards homesteading and, becoming self-sustainable has merit. And I know Kristine and I have had lots of conversations over the years about these things. And what she does is taking definitely the wisdom of nature and creating some amazing products. And I absolutely love quite a few of her different products for the skin. And my husband and I even fight over one particular cream, and we talk about it in the podcast. So before I introduce you to Kristine Courville, I want you to be thinking during this podcast about how there is so much right around you that you could be using for your health. All right, let's get into the podcast. Kristine Courville, welcome to the Health Fix podcast.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
It's been a long time coming. I've wanted to have you on to chat about your products because I fell in love with them when you sent them over to me. And now that you told me you can eat anything that you made, I'm like, that is so cool. So, of course, I always like to start off these podcasts with the story of how Sahale Botanicals came to be and what brought you to working with herbal medicine and skincare in particular.
Well, it really started probably about 5 or 6 years ago during the health crisis. I've always had the best success with alternative and natural medicine with you, starting out with you. But that period really opened my eyes to just how broken our Western healthcare system is. And it really led me on just a journey of rediscovery of the wisdom of our grandmothers who trusted in plant medicine for generations. And I ended up earning a certificate of medicinal plants from Cornell University. And then I did a year apprenticeship with Hawthorne and Honey, where we learned sustainable wildcrafting. And it was just it was the best experience. And I really learned just how powerful plants were, where even their origin as far as pharmaceuticals. I mean, I wasn't aware that pharmaceutical companies take just a single constituent from a plant, synthesize it in a lab, and then that's the pharmaceutical. But with plants, you have the original and you have the different constituents, additionally that all work together to heal the body. And I was just amazed at how effective plant medicine is. It just got me really excited to share that with other people and bring plant medicine and herbalism back into the mainstream after it had been really marginalized and discredited in the early 20th century.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you by any chance get a hold of some of the books that talked about like certain cases where Rockefeller and Carnegie and all of
The
that
Flexner
kind of
report, yes.
yes, the Flexner report.
Mhm.
Yes. Was that
Mhm.
not eye-opening?
Yes, yes. Yeah, and that's really where it started. The Flexner report really brought herbalism into question in people's minds. Also, the American Medical Association, really promoted, surgical and pharmacology, I guess, from a pharmacology-based medical system, and rather than herbal medicine.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild. And for those of you listening who haven't heard of the Flexner report, search it, take a look at it, and keep an open mind because it is something that changed the face of medicine for us
Mm-hmm.
in the world, but in particular in the US, it really shaped what we are dealing with today. So Kristine's kind of stepping us out of it here with Sahale Botanicals. And so before we hit record, we had talked a little bit about skin and skincare. And I've been through the 10-step protocols with estheticians and all of these different things and looking at now, I had reactions much like you had mentioned. Tell us a little bit about what had happened to you when you had tried one of the medical lines of a prescription product for the skin.
Well, it was a little funny. I broke out into a rash. My eyes swelled shut. I had to go to an allergist and finally realized that that's what it was. I thought it had to be something else because, of course, medical grade was expensive and, was supposed to work. But that's kind of, really how I started my skincare line. It was really honestly just out of frustration. So, I started creating something that I couldn't find, something that was totally clean. And one thing that I learned was that natural does not mean clean. When it's advertised as natural, it doesn't mean clean, and expensive does not mean that it works. So I took a botanical skincare class, got some of the basic formulas down, created my own. I used the jar in about 3 months. And after about 3 months, I noticed that my pores were all tightened and my skin looked beautiful. My skin was all plumped up. So I gave some to a friend, and same thing with her. After she was done with the jar, her pores were all tightened up and closed and her skin looked great. And it was kind of at that point that I realized I had something that I could share with other women.
What was it? What did you use? Which particular product?
Well, that was the calendula and neroli skin cream. And I actually advertise it as a night cream. It's a little heavier. It has calendula infused olive oil in it. But I love just using it during the day, especially in the wintertime when the, air is dry. It just feels so good on your skin. But I use a rose geranium hydrosol that I source from an organic farm here in Washington locally. And I grow my own calendula, and I use an alcohol intermediary process to infuse the oil. So I macerate it in alcohol for 24 hours before I simmer it in a yogurt maker for 5 days. Makes it very potent, very skin healing. I always use fresh herbs for everything. I use fresh herbs for tinctures. I use fresh herbs for my oils. And I was really surprised when I learned recently that many herbalists don't use fresh plants for their products. They order dried plants, to be shipped into them. And that's how they create their products, which, I don't know, I can't speak to the potency of their products, but for me, that's why I just love wildcrafting and growing my own herbs, because I pick them and then I use them before they can even start degrading. And I know a lot of people they kind of frown on using fresh plants for oils because the moisture, if you get moisture into the oil, it can cause rancidity. But the way that I do it, I leave the covers off so that all of the moisture, any alcohol left over after the alcohol intermediary will just evaporate. And then I don't, press the plants when I'm straining it. So none of the moisture from the plants gets in there, but you have all of the goodness without any of the degradation of the plants.
It's huge. That's huge because when I've seen like the DIY, it's always with dried for the most part. And one of the things I like to always look at is if we're going to be using something, much like if we're feeding our skin or we're feeding our body something, we want something that's freshest, right? We don't want something that's been dead for we don't know how long.
Right.
And so now you have that, plus you have the energetics behind it too.
Yes. And That's one thing I've learned quite a bit about herbal energetics in my work, and it's given me like a much deeper sense of how to choose the right herb for each person and situation. And just kind of define herbal energetics. It's really the art of understanding the body's unique patterns and choosing the right herb to support balance.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you want me to go on about that?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
All right. So the six tissue states of Western herbalism provide a traditional energetic framework for understanding patterns of imbalance in the body related to moisture, heat, and tissue tone. These states help herbalists identify whether someone is in a hot or cold, damp or dry, or tense or relaxed condition. This system draws from Western herbalism, but as you know, it's also used in Ayurveda and traditional Chinese medicine. So within this framework, herbal energetics describe how an herb influences these overall patterns of balance. So whether the herb is warming or cooling, moistening or drying, or stimulating or relaxing. While herbal actions focus on the specific physiological effects of an herb on organs, tissues, and body systems. So, for example, nettles and cleavers both can act as diuretics, diuretics is an herbal action, which means they help move excess fluid out of the body and toxins. Nettles are cooling and drying, which means that they would work better for someone with inflammatory conditions, such as like an excess mucus or allergic reactions, while cleavers are cooling and moistening, which would make them better for someone who is a little more sluggish, but also dry or depleted. So together, energetics and actions allow herbalists to choose remedies that address both the underlying condition and the specific symptoms that a person is experiencing, rather than just matching the symptoms.
That
And
makes
this is
sense.
it's kind of what makes the difference between just kind of matching an herb to your symptom. We're asking what is the underlying pattern, not only what is just the symptom.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't think about these kind of things. And so when you were working on formulating your particular products, you were thinking about certain patterns that someone might
Hmm.
have and how to
Hmm.
correct that. So if we go back to the favorite of the calendula neroli that my husband and I are fighting over because even he was like, I really like this. And it was hydrating, right? Incredibly hydrating. And you were saying you're using it during the day, but it's kind of more of a night type of moisturizer. We were both using it during the day too because we were finding we were pretty dry.
Hmm.
What kind of like, let's say, skin type or person in that case were you thinking about for that night cream?
It's really thinking about someone with more mature skin. The calendula is so healing. It doesn't completely heal wrinkles, but it just really helps with that. And then also I've had an issue with large pores my entire life, and the face cream completely cleared that up.
Wow. I think for a lot of people, there are the little nuances. And my nuance was that my wrinkles in my forehead, and I wasn't about to go get Botox. My wrinkles in my forehead were getting deeper and deeper, and I'm like, what in the heck? And then when I started using the calendula cream, I was like, oh, it's a little less. It's a little less. And it keeps going. I never expect like my wrinkles to fully go away because I consider them
Uh-huh.
badges of honor.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But I'm also like, but it's definitely looking more fresh. I'm more hydrated, which is something that happens to us as we get older. And of
Uh-huh.
course, we were talking too, I'm pushing 50, you're over 50, just by a little bit. And your skin has always looked wonderful, always has. And so I'm like, wow,
Cute.
she's doing the right things. And like you said, like not anything that is incredibly expensive. And you had mentioned something before we hit record that you're like, I have the money. I just choose to use my money in something that's clean. That's something, could you share a little bit more about your philosophy behind that for folks? Because I'm guessing a lot of people,
Mhm.
might be thinking that, but not 100% sure which direction to go for themselves.
Yeah, well, I mean, I am okay with spending a lot on quality products. I love quality. I love beautiful, rich textures and scents. And, I'm willing to spend the money on that.
I think for a lot of women, we are looking at like, okay, I've got some extra money. I want to put my money, in a particular place, but we also are realizing that we've been lied to a lot about a
Mhm.
lot of different things. And so when you were coming up with your philosophy for creating Sahale Botanicals, you were saying that, yeah, I really wanted to create something high quality
Mhm.
that also gets some results there, and we're not, plastic
Right.
surgery here with
Yes.
herbs, but,
Mhm.
and that was kind of your
Yeah,
background.
yeah, no, when I had my skincare line in mind, I did want potency and I wanted quality. And like I had mentioned, before we hit record, there's no magic ingredients, but they are all clean. And I have infused everything to the maximum potency. As I mentioned before, I get everything locally sourced. Everything is very potent and strong. And my products are not super expensive, but they do take a while to create. So that's really the only thing in those products that you don't immediately recognize, but it has
Yeah.
to be in there, for safety reasons. But yeah, I mean, I just wanted something clean, something that had some rich textures, rich aromas in it. The rose in the calendula, or I'm sorry, the rose in the chamomile and rose is
Yeah.
also astringent. So that will help kind of close up your pores and tighten up your skin as well. So I just really wanted to choose ingredients that would be clean, fresh, hydrating, and just work.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. It makes sense. Now, something you were telling me is like you grow a lot of your own herbs. And then
I
there's also the
Mhm.
idea of wild crafting and kind of going around your yard. And you had mentioned that you also have a tea coming out that is coming out maybe before Christmas that has fern and spruce tips. I think a lot of people are like, how do you grow these things? How do you harvest fern and spruce tips? When do you do it? Give us a little insight into your botanical lab at home. And like, where are you growing? Do you have a greenhouse? Do you grow in your kitchen? How does it work?
Well, I do grow some of the things in my yard. So at this time, I just moved, so everything is still in 25-gallon pots in the yard. But I do a lot of wildcrafting. I am just finding my new spots here, but I live now in the forest, so I'm surrounded by Doug fir and spruce. So thankfully, amazingly, I can just go right into my backyard and harvest all of the new little spring green tips from the fir trees in the yard. And then there's different places I'm finding now where I can go. I just went and harvested mullein at a park about half an hour away and just finding my new plants. I actually just found here a new one that I didn't have in Tacoma at all, which is wild teasel, which is really apparently used a lot to heal Lyme disease. And it's
Really?
amazing for nerve pain as well. But the Lyme disease I thought was particularly kind of apropos with all of the ticks coming out this year.
Yes. Yes. All of the ticks magically appearing this year.
Yes, yes.
Hmm.
So I find my plants generally things like St. John's wort, I'll find them in the woods, different Forest Service roads. I'll just go explore places that I know that they don't spray. Sometimes state parks, if I talk to the rangers and they confirm that there's no spraying, I'll gather sometimes, whatever I can find in those parks. And I do everything by season. So right now, St. John's wort is in full bloom. So I'll find St. John's wort and I'll make my oils and tinctures with that. And then once it's gone, it's gone until next year when they bloom again.
So cool. Cause like, we don't think about with the seasons. We don't, a lot of us
Mhm.
don't even know when certain plants are in season. In fact, I didn't even know about St. John's wort. So there you go. It's one of those things where we're not connected as much
Mhm.
to nature, and this is what I love about the wildcrafting because yeah, it's like a seasonal when it's in season, you can get it, you can make your
Mhm.
products, and then after that, now we're moving to the next season. Now I'm
Mhm.
super curious about rose. Did you use your own roses or do you find a source to get roses from?
Actually, wildcraft my own roses. Yes. So they grow a lot on the coast and which we have a lot of out here. So there's a specific place that I go in Washington that just the beach is covered in wild rugosa roses, the larger roses. So I go harvest there. I can harvest sustainably there. So I gather a lot of them. And it's what I make my rose infused honey with as well. So I make gallons of that.
Nice. And where do you get your honey? Like, do you have a farm that you get your honey from too in Washington?
Try to get it locally wherever I am. So I have not found a source out here yet, but there is a source in Port Orchard that I would get it from.
Okay, for those of you guys listening that aren't maybe familiar with the Washington State, Port Orchard's up on the peninsula there. And, Kristine now is down in the Columbia River area there that separates between Washington and Oregon. And I mean, a lot of wineries are down not too far from you. And so you have quite the environment for growing. What's been one of the like surprise plants besides the one for lime that I do not know? Also learning a ton of things here. What other surprises have you had in your neighborhood that you found that grow a little bit more in the southern part of Washington?
Well, all the trees, number one, and there's just tons of trees out here, and that deserty area. So as you move east, there's a lot of plants there that I was really surprised by. One of my very favorite plants is called desert parsley or Lomatium dissectum. It's a root. You use the root. So out hiking, the wildflowers in the Columbia Gorge are just spectacular, and people come from all over to do the wildflower hikes. So while I was out on my hike, I just saw the landscape covered in Lomatium. It's usually really hard to find up in the Puget Sound area, but it's just a beautiful root. It's got a really resiny scent to it, but incredible for cold and flu season. It's antiviral, antimicrobial, antifungal. It's an amazing plant. It's one of my top plants.
Yeah, I like it. I definitely like it for lung health in particular. And of course, that's another thing that you have is some really great elixirs and really great things that I would say, women over 40 could use, especially some of the emotional component support there. And forgive me for not remembering all the names of them, but you had, one in particular for the heart. And that one was one that I was using in addition to the Calm Focus. I believe that is the name of that one, because that one was like my jam, helping me to concentrate. Because it's, right in midlife, it's like where your brain gets all like wonky and then like your heart like emotionally and like worked up, you may get that anxiety. Let's talk a little bit about your elixirs, your tinctures, and kind of move into that space a little bit, because Lomatium was a great like segue into that.
Yeah.
Did you choose to make specifically for us ladies over 50 trying to figure out midlife?
Well, I do have one for that. It's called Mood Balance, and it's motherwort and black cohosh, which the motherwort, it's good for a racing heart. Just really good calming herb. Its Latin name is Leonoris cardiaca. So it is, specifically, for heart issues. And then the black cohosh is amazing, traditional support for hormonal balance and endocrine system support. But yeah, the other heart tincture, it's called Vibrant Hearts. That's another one. It took all year to gather all of the herbs for that. So it has hawthorn flower, which is gathered in May, motherwort, which is gathered in June, hawthorn berry, which is gathered in September. What else did it have in it? Tulsi, which is gathered in around July, August. So all of those herbs I just kind of gathered together and threw them in my jar as they became available, and just kind of brewed over a few months and with some brandy and honey. And I use that because, tinctures in general, just to be honest, just taste terrible.
Yeah.
They're pretty powerful. And someone, if you've got issues with your heart or emotional issues, you don't want to be, taking the battery acid tincture. So I made it with the brandy and honey. It's just a lot softer and just a lot nicer to take.
Makes sense. That makes sense. I mean, it's definitely a deterrent for a lot of people because of the flavor. And brandy, I mean, my grandma was giving me brandy as a kid. Usually it was for my digestive system. But I think, alcohol being, the difference between brandy and grain alcohol, or Everclear, of what I was taught to put the herbs in for tinctures, is wildly, wildly different. Did you end up searching out a brandy that you particularly liked or had one that you had kind of became friends
I
with?
mean, I use an expensive brandy just because it tastes better and they work better and they're usually produced with less chemicals. I also use an organic cane alcohol for my other tinctures. I don't generally use Everclear just because it's just a little more harsh.
Yeah, it's gross. It's
Mhm.
gross. And I think this is really something to bring up. A lot of us, like obviously I'm a naturopath. Obviously, I was taught how to do things similar to you, but we also were taught more in the harsher methods. Like,
Mhm.
here's how you quick whip up something using Everclear. Now I'm hearing you, like I harvested throughout the whole spring through summer into the fall to make this. And I think for a lot of people, they don't realize like what wild crafting, like what goes into something like that. And then
Mhm.
you said you put it in your jar. So give us the description of how it's happening in real time. Like, so you're picking something, it's going in the jar in the brandy, and like each month you're adding more. Like, give us the scoop.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, that's exactly right. And sometimes I make them separately as well, just so I can. I can always make custom blends for people for like us going back to the energetics. If
Mhm.
there's something an issue that a person has, an underlying condition, then I can use my simple, which simple is just a single tincture with just a single plant in it, as opposed to just kind of throwing everything in one jar. And I wish I had it, so I'm actually in the middle of making a new batch. So it's my jar is about maybe 3/4 of the way full at this point. It's got the motherwort, it's got the wild rose, it's got the hawthorn flowers, and it just needs the tulsi and the berries now. So
Wow.
yeah. And I practice folk herbalism. I'm about to start a clinical program, but folk herbalism is basically the herbalism that our grandmothers practiced. So we'll go out into the woods or the backyard, fill up our jar, cut things up, chop it up about as much as we have patience for. Make sure that it's filled up, enough, kind of, eye it, looks about right, fill it up with the alcohol and set it in the cupboard for 6 to 8 weeks. So it's just more accessible than measuring everything out and making sure you have the right, ratios to everything, exactly perfectly. And I do teach classes, and that's, what I really love about the folk herbalism part of it is that it's more accessible to people. It's easier for people. It's like, oh, this isn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. You know, I I really want to bring herbalism back into the mainstream.
I think I think it's incredible. I think we've lost the art of it.
Mhm.
And what you're talking about, is kind of like how my grandmother would do things when I saw her, gather certain things and be like, take this for you name it. I was doing all kinds of shots of things when I was a kid and I had no idea what I was taking. I'm like, okay.
Right,
I
yeah, your
did.
grandmother would have the jar in the cupboard with a spoon on top, and then when you start to sneeze, she goes, "Go get the jar and the spoon."
Yep. Yep. Go get it,
And that's how it
and
was. Yeah, mhm.
it worked. I'm still alive. Still alive.
Mm,
I survived.
living proof.
And I think it was great. I think it was great. And I like the folk method because when I start to get, like, even in practice, when I've worked with folks with reconstituting peptides and putting water
Mhm,
into a peptide and mixing it up, I mean, it like you could see the head just start spinning,
mhm,
much like Beetlejuice going on, And so it's like folk method just I think that's what we are generally maybe more just accustomed to, more we're trending to. But we also have, something that I think I would love for everyone, to really reestablish their connection to themselves of knowing when, "Yep, that's good. Yep, that's what I want. That's what I need for that," and learning that wisdom.
mhm. Yeah, and some herbs that people don't really like and don't really work for them, and some will, and that's okay, I mean, yeah.
When you teach your classes and you have people looking at like what herbs work for them, what herbs don't work for them, do you have people kind of just like touch the herbs, smell the herbs? How do you start things off? I would love to
Absolutely.
hear.
Well, I teach a spring greens class, and I usually have it at a friend's farm. All the gorgeous spring greens she has in her property. So, yeah, I have everyone in. It's usually nettles, cleaver, and whatever else we can find. Chickweed is a really good one as well for the spring, but stinging nettle, I think, is one of my top 3 most loved and most used plants. It's just a powerhouse packed with minerals and vitamins, great for allergies. So I always make tea and pass that around just so everyone can just get a feel for it and a taste for it. I honestly really don't love the taste of stinging nettle. I drink it because it's so great for you, but I don't love it. But some people really do. And you can tell when somebody really needs it and they're really depleted of vitamins and minerals because they just absolutely love it. And they will drink the whole cup of it.
What's your secret to harvesting nettles? Because that's, obviously they've got stingers on them. What do you guys
Long
do?
gloves, rose gloves.
There you go. There you go.
Yep.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Now, cleavers is probably, when it comes to another plant that I really love because of the lymphatic properties and just because it's everywhere. A lot of places, let's put it that way, pretty much a lot of places in the Pacific Northwest. What do you like to mix with cleavers? What's kind of your jam for cleavers? I'm very curious.
For lymphatic, I love to mix cleavers with calendula. Surprisingly, calendula has really great lymphatic cleansing properties, and also violet does as well.
Violet. Also, things that show up as weeds in your yard, violet in
Right.
particular, is very, very common.
Chickweed is amazing as well. Chickweed is best. Anyone can just go pick it in the yard. It's actually best as a juice. So if you just kind of put some water in it, blend it up a little bit, squeeze it out. I put it into an ice cube tray and just pop it in the freezer. So you can just take an ice cube here and there and put it in your smoothie or your juice, and you have your chickweed lymphatic.
I love that. Oh my gosh. Let's tell folks if they're looking for some chickweed, where would you most find it? And if you can describe it as best as possible. And then guys, I'll get a link in the podcast notes. So I'm sure Kristine has something that we could put in the podcast notes for you to identify it fully. I mean, there's apps now, but I like folks to do their homework versus the app.
Chickweed you can find in so many different places. It's usually in a field, and you usually always find it with a couple other plants. One is called purple dead nettle, and the other is miner's lettuce. So those are all 3 just some amazing spring greens. They're all usually, the purple dead nettle is good for allergies. You can chew it up and put it on a bee sting. The miner's lettuce, it looks like a little fairy cup. It's a little round circular cup and just packed with vitamin C. It's named miner's lettuce because during the gold rush, the miners would take it into underground with them to prevent scurvy.
Interesting.
But the chickweed is really beautiful. It's just this cute little plant. It's got opposite leaves. Its Latin name is Stellaria media. So its little flowers look like a star. It looks like they have 10 petals, but they're just 5 petals with some deep divots in the middle of them. If you pull the stem apart, there's a little white cord in the middle that's kind of stretchy. So that's the way to identify the chickweed.
Wow. I had no idea. That's so cool. Another one, chickweed is very common for skin, in particular skin topical products. And then you'll often see plantain along with that. And plantain here in Wisconsin, we have it everywhere. And for those of you who are listening, you might be like, plantain, like the banana thing? No. This is a weed. Usually it's getting kicked out of your yard. You want it, people want it out. But I'm like, no, keep it, especially if you're not spraying. Do you use plantain often?
I do. I use plantain in a lot of my skin healing combinations. I use it a lot. It's very mild. It's good for little kids. So I have a diaper cream that I just made for a woman that I know who just had a baby, for just a diaper cream or just general skin healing in general. I added some calendula, which is, also one of my top plants for skin healing, and yarrow, which is just a little bit antimicrobial.
Something about you that I know, because we have mutual patients of mine, but friends of yours. She gives gifts of herbal medicine all the time in terms of things. I just keep hearing stories and I'm like, wow, it's such a great gift, which for those of you listening, it's like, how cool would it be to go out in your own yard and be able to harvest something, make something and give it to someone, give someone the gift of medicine. So cool. Now, you've got your spring greens. Now, what kind of other classes are you doing? What other things can folks learn from you?
Well, I do a Firesider workshop, which is really a lot of fun. So that's kind of, again, on the kitchen medicine side of things. And the basics of Firesider, for anyone who doesn't know, it's another one of those remedies that is, I mean, it tastes, the taste is strong. It's a strong taste. So the basics is garlic, onion, horseradish root, peppers, either cayenne peppers, jalapenos, and apple cider vinegar. You let it kind of brew in the apple cider vinegar for 3 to 4 weeks and then strain it out. And it is amazing for cold and flu season, very preventative. And at the first sign of a cold or flu, you just start taking shots. But I like to add other things as well. So there's all kinds of other things that you can add. And really kind of just depending on how you kind of lean, some people are kind of prone to bronchitis. So I'll, have someone put elecampane root in their fire cider, or if, you always get, the chills or aches from flu or whatever, I have you put willow bark in it. Cranberries, I love to put cranberries in there. Tons of vitamin C, really great for the urinary tract system. Turmeric, black pepper. I also put turkey tail mushroom in my fire cider. There's all kinds of just different fun things you can do with it. And then you can tailor it, as I said, just to, if there's any way that you lean, you have an issue with every year, you can address that with herbs and mushrooms in your fire cider.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I have tried it multiple times. It's good. It's fire. It's fire.
Fire.
The horseradish for me, like I always love horseradish. It opens up my sinuses like no other. Man, this is good stuff. Secondary to like if I needed like a massive amount of wasabi or something, or horseradish if I need to like drain, but the fire cider is a little bit easier than eating copious amounts of horseradish or wasabi. Now, what if we have to look, you said you love nettles, not really your favorite to drink. What other herbs would you say, like what would be your top 3 herbs that you were like, if you were stranded on an island and like somehow someone gave you wisdom to put some things in a bag just in case you might get stranded, what would you have with you? And why?
Well, stinging nettle would be one of them. Also, St. John's wort. St. John's wort, yes, it is one of the best plants. It's so versatile. So it has multiple properties. So it's amazing for nerve pain. So any kind of sciatica or neuropathy, it's excellent for that. It's probably best known as a mood lifter. So it does help your body regulate serotonin, which is wonderful for our really dark Pacific Northwest winters. And it also has antiviral properties. So I infuse it in oil. I use it with lemon balm. And I've also heard that many AIDS patients take St. John's wort just as a substitute for AIDS medications because it's so antiviral. It does have a lot of contraindications, though, with medication. So if you are taking any prescription medications, then definitely check with the doctor before taking it. And I think my third would be Oregon grape root. It is the absolute best plant, and it's everywhere here, Washington. When you pull it out, as I mentioned, it's the root. So you scrape the root a little bit, and you can see the orange berberine, which is one of the main constituents in it. It's excellent for balancing blood sugar. It really is an amazing liver or alterative. It's not really lymphatic, but it's a liver alterative. So it really helps move fluids and toxins out of your liver. It's also antifungal. So you can take, a lot of people take it traveling with them. So, you drink a lot of Oregon grape tea before you travel, and it'll help you from getting food poisoning.
That's cool. I've not heard of that one before.
It's also has some antibiotic properties. And as you probably know, a major problem in hospitals now are antibiotic resistant bacteria. So I have heard a story of somebody I know who was in the hospital for something minor and caught MRSA while they were in the hospital. And it was a little iffy on whether they were going to make it out of the hospital or not. Well, my friend makes just a gallon of Oregon grape tea, brings it into them, had them drink the whole thing. a couple days later, they were home.
That's impressive. I love
Yeah.
Oregon grapefruit
Mhm,
for that, for urinary tract infections too, so
mhm.
many different things. Now, one of the things that a lot of people were saying for a long time, and I don't know if this is even true because I was like, I see it everywhere in the Pacific Northwest, but they were saying it was like endangered and it was over harvested. And I'm like, were we
Everywhere
lied
but the
to?
Pacific Northwest,
Okay.
where,
Okay.
the freeway medians. Yes.
Which I don't think we want to be harvesting there, but, you
Right.
know, but we've got spots, and I mean, like, or
Mhm,
I saw it everywhere. Like, I'd go on hikes, I'd see it. People's
mhm.
backyards, wherever, and so I always wondered if it was somewhat of a we were lied to about like don't buy it, don't use it, kind of a thing. And so sounds like if
Yeah,
you
we do have tons of it here. And it is actually, and again, we want to be sustainable about harvesting it. So I just take a few here, a few there, and it does grow back really quickly. Whenever I pull out the roots, I clip off the crown and replant it. So the next year it'll, replant itself and grow roots. So yeah.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. You're planting the crown after you harvest it. It's like regenerative
Right.
picking, harvesting.
Yeah,
What
exactly.
other plants do you do those kind of things with? Like what give us kind of a rundown of like how you help to let the plant regenerate itself from what you've taken.
Well, I mean, a lot of plants, you just take off, as much of the plant as you're going to use. Whenever I harvest anything, I don't harvest unless I find a huge patch of it somewhere. So St. John's wort, for example, I just bring that up because that's what I just recently harvested. And goldenrod is coming up now too. There's large patches of that, and I'll just take what I need and move on. I make sure that I leave plenty, for reseeding and regrowing. A lot of times, like stinging nettles, when you cut them off down to the very bottom, they just spring back up again. They love to be trimmed.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I think a lot of plants are more resilient than we think.
Hmm.
But it is important, like you mentioned, if you are going to go out and harvest, make sure there's a decent amount of them there. You're not getting like the last one, and you're not taking more than you would use and then wasting it. And, I think over time, obviously, we learn how much you need for a
Hmm.
particular amount of time. In terms of like, you've got your 3 plants that you would take, right? On if you knew you were going to get stranded on an island, because we all know that. But if that chance exists, now in terms of your products, and things. You have the teas, and we just kind of started to talk about it. But when I asked you before, you were telling me you love your teas, and you love in particular the bath teas.
Yes.
Let's talk about bath teas because a lot of people maybe haven't even heard of a bath tea and what this is, and they're like, "Wait, can I drink it and have my body absorb it in a bath?" So tell us all about bath teas.
Well, you could drink it, but you probably don't want to once it's in the bath. So I do make the bath teas really large. They're probably around 3 to 5 ounces of plant material. So, and I make them that large just, because there's a lot of volume of liquid in the bath. And I want people to be able to use them 3 or 4 times. So a few of them are, mostly scent. I just wanted people to have a really beautiful experience in the bath. And as I said before, I love rich aromas. So some of my bath teas, it actually started where I created a medicinal herb garden in my backyard where I was living before. And some of these plants, like the mugwort and anise hyssop, just grew out of control. I mean, they were like 10 to 12 feet tall. So I had all these plants, and I have a freeze dryer. So I was freeze drying them. And what the freeze drying does, it preserves their medicinal qualities, but it also really brings out the volatile oils. So the scents are really powerful. And I had bags of all of these herbs, and I'm thinking, what am I going to do with all of these? So I started creating the bath teas. And one of my favorites is one that I call Uplift, that has the anise hyssop, which has this really kind of beautiful, almost like a licorice scent. And I added eucalyptus and orange and a couple other scents that were just really beautiful. So the result in the bath is just this really relaxing, just really stimulating, kind of uplifting scent. I also use desert sage. So that's another plant that you can find kind of in a desert area. just has a really deep, rich, grounding scent. And I paired that with juniper berries and some magnesium salts. So it's just a really restorative bath. Yeah.
Sounds so good. Sounds so good. I need see, my thought, because we're remodeling still, and I'm like, I need the good bath to go with my bath tea. My bath right now is not the ambiance I'm looking for, but I'm like, maybe I can find a hotel. Oh my God. Does anybody have a bathtub I could borrow? Let me know. I just love the idea of the scents and like the perfect environment. I'm like, I need a place where there's a bathtub with a view. That's what I'm thinking about.
Yes.
Bathtub with a view. So if you got a bathtub with a view, I would love to borrow your bath. All joking aside, though, I love the idea of bath teas. And I love the idea of just being able to have the scents and the smell and the full like sensory experience. And it sounds to me like that is something that you're all about with every single aspect
Yeah.
of the experience with the herbs.
Yes, I absolutely love that. Yeah. And I want them all to do something too, right? They have to be useful. So I have another bath tea that is for skin. So it's all my calendula that I grow. It grows like crazy. So I freeze dry that as well. And I use that in a tea with plantain, which we just talked about, and colloidal oats. It's just a really nice tea. Very, very skin soothing, very skin healing.
So good. So good. Well, Kristine, thank you so much for kind of diving into your business with us and all of your things that you love to make in the wildcrafting, teaching me a ton. This is awesome. I have no doubt that folks are going to want to check out some of your classes. Now, are they all in the Pacific Northwest? Are you going to do any online? What's the story there, and how can folks find you?
Yes, I do all of my classes in person. Maybe someday I'll do them online, but currently they are all in person. You can find me at sahalebotanicals.com, SAHALE Botanicals. And I'm also on Instagram.
All right, guys, check her out. There's also going to be everything in the podcast notes at drjkrauseND.com. And she also gave us a code for a discount to try out her products. That'll be below. That's DocJ15. And I'm hoping I can talk her into doing a little bit of something with me in Tacoma at some point where we can bring some folks in then too. So stay tuned.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Kristine. I really appreciate you having the time to come in
for
with me.
having me here.
My pleasure.
Hey, fellow health junkie, thanks for listening to the Health Fix podcast. If you enjoyed tuning in, please help support me to get the word out about the podcast. Subscribe, rate, and review, and just get that word out. Thanks again for listening.